We're back on villains, baby. The cartoony, the evil, and the insane. Villains ranging from gods, mob bosses, agents, Power Rangers, horrible mothers, clowns, giraffes. I love giraffes. And so many more that are just ridiculous and wacky in nature. Some hold a bigger threat than others, but they're all villains one in the same. And in my opinion, no one does villains like One Piece. Because all these characters are so iconic in their own right. Yes, I'm even including Foxy. He took Chopper from the Straw Hats and you don't think that's the most dastardly evil thing a villain could ever do? Shame on you. I was sobbing my heart out for Antonio. But today we're touching on one of the biggest, baddest, and most recent villains yet. A villain so villainous he was technically Doflamingo's boss. You know a big bad is a big bad when even Doflamingo doesn't want any beef with them. We'll see who's giggling like a little freak when he gets stepped on like a bug. That's right. Today we're talking about the one and only big bad scaly dragon dad, captain of the beast pirates, Kaido. Fun fact about me, I actually really like Kaido. I originally thought he was just going to be characterless because sometimes it is fine to have a big bad that is just a big bad with no extra depth. Oda has done that before with characters like Enel and Spandam. Although Spandam honestly does have more commentary than Enel, being a 2D villain is not a bad thing. After all, Enel has fans, doesn't he? He said funny things.
Yeah. Banana.
And made funny faces, and all he had to be was comically evil. People like that. Audiences in general like that. There's a reason why the classic Disney villain is so beloved, and it's because we don't always need a sob story. Sometimes it's fun to like characters who are just bad, don't you think? Oda sure seemed to think so, at least until we got a larger understanding of the political world of One Piece, and now nearly every big bad we meet does in fact have a story to tell. And remember, it's not an excuse for the behavior we see, it's an explanation, with Kaido being no exception. I truly was not expecting the biggest story from Kaido. I thought he was pretty self-explanatory and that was that. Yet Oda still manages to pull out the rug from under me, because I do think Kaido's a terrible person. I do think he's a tyrannical dictator who deserves his defeat. And yet, I still think he is a tragic man. Kaido is a very mixed bag in terms of who thinks what about him. Tons of people either love him or tons of people think he's shallow and boring. I'll admit I'm on the loving side, and no, it's not just because he can turn into a big, beautiful dragon. Like, destruction aside, his dragon form is cute, right? Don't you just want to scratch his little chin? Is it just me? What I'm here to talk about today is Kaido, and I want to explain why he makes me feel a certain sorrow. I can promise you it has much more to do than just his drinking issues or his crying fits and even flirting fits. If Kaido weren't so threatening, he'd be so pathetic. There's something cute about a man who just hates his life. And I'll be doing something a little different today. I'd like to show my face more so you guys can see where these thoughts are coming from, because I think there's benefit to having a talking head segment to an essay. I just haven't done it before because I'm horrible at reading scripts on camera and I also get nervous on camera. I will do my best, so please stick with me and together we will journey into the dragon's lair to pick apart how Kaido works and why Kaido has gotten to where he is. But before I do that, it's sponsor time, and I have an exciting new sponsor today. Say it with me, guys. While we cannot all be pirates in our current day and age, we can still be pirates online. But this time, we can do it safely with NordVPN. I love VPNs because it makes sure your internet searches, browsing, and history is completely protected. But with NordVPN, it hides your IP address and keeps you safe from spying. So you can safely Google something like, you all know what I'm gonna say, Zoro's big, fat boobies. NordVPN also protects you from pop-up ads and malicious malware. So if Zoro's big jugs were hiding any viruses in them, NordVPN will bat them away for good. It also allows you to be thrown anywhere in the world, meaning if you want to see Japanese ads on YouTube, NordVPN can do that for you. Just set it to Japan and you're off. It can also give you access to any country's version of Netflix or multiple streaming services. I personally use it to watch different anime that are available in different countries, especially One Piece movies. And with my link below, you will get the best NordVPN deal yet. You can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan, and it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Be sure to use my link below, in both the description and the pinned comments, and you'll get a fast, safe, and cheap VPN. So grab that deal now, and thank you so much NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Okay, now let's claw into the captain of the Beast Pirates, Kaido. Kaido, to me, is an interesting case, mainly because the One Piece world is a world where he can truly flourish. Or, supposedly, it's a world where he can flourish. And what do I mean by that? The world of One Piece is one that is constantly plagued with war, with pirates taking over the world, and the Marines taking over the world. Thus, it's found itself in a time of pretty extreme violence. You'll be hard-pressed to find a peaceful island in One Piece, at least before Luffy comes along and upends the powers that be. But Kaido certainly exists in a realm where a beast such as him, who is said to be the strongest being in the world, should have a very strong sense in his meaning to exist. After all, if you take a victorious gladiator out of the gladiator ring, what are they supposed to do? Their existence is that ring, and with One Piece's world, the whole of the seas may as well be Kaido's ring. So if that's the case, then why is Kaido so depressed? Don't just take my word for it. When we get our first introduction of Kaido, which I call his pre-introduction, we get a lot of insight from just a few lines. We're shown Kaido trying to commit Kaidocide. Sorry, I have to say that for YouTube censorship. And when he gets back up with what he says is another failed attempt, we find out his hobby is Kaidocide. That is an insane hobby to have.
Suicide is badass!
And it probably shouldn't be the hobby of a man who's found himself in a world that seemingly both praises and fears his existence. But let's actually go back to the very start before we make sense of Kaido's, fun hobby? Kaido was actually first mentioned during chapter 696, the ending of Punk Hazard. Law mentions him to Luffy, and that's how they formed their alliance. From here on out, we discover Caesar is connected to Doflamingo, who is connected to Kaido, and Punk Hazard's operations exist for Kaido specifically. Between the three of them, it's a chain of command, and Kaido sits at the very top, as an emperor of the sea. So upon first mention of Kaido's name, he already has connections to weapons, factories, and has a power so terrifying even Doflamingo refuses to meddle with him outside of trading. While pirates are seen as lawless, they still have their own hierarchy on the seas, something that Law knew very well. The smile fruits that Doffy produced were so valuable to Kaido that Law knew the destruction of the smile factories meant Kaido would seek out Doffy's head specifically. In Doffy's case, it seems there's more risk than reward here, but that just goes to show how terrifying of a being Kaido is if Doffy would rather be on some beneficial level with Kaido than avoid him altogether. Doflamingo was an extremely cunning man with plans of his own, and Kaido, as the four emperors all are, was a wild card. While Doflamingo wasn't in complete control, he could still stay out of Kaido's line of fire by being in business with him. But of course, the question must be met of why Doflamingo was trading fruits for weapons with Kaido, and how there was a benefit for either of them in that exchange. As we first discovered with Doflamingo, the man just wanted complete destruction of the world. He held a malicious grudge that was unbreakable, and the Celestial Dragons refusing to take him back was his final straw. So with Kaido's weapons, he seeks for the end of a world world which he claims is a cesspool. In short, if Doflamingo can't sit back on the throne, then he'll give the ones that do sit on the throne nothing left to rule. And why is this all important? Because it's context, and Doflamingo's own story, reasons and motivations tie in with Kaido's, especially when we get Kaido's first introduction, with him falling to the ground in an attempt to take his own life. As he stands back up, he yells something that begins clicking the pieces into place. Let this dreary world be destroyed. Let's start the greatest war this planet has ever seen. If we take into account Doflamingo's own, I want to call them shenanigans, but that feels a bit too goofy for what he was doing. Yes, the shenanigans of usurping a whole kingdom and committing genocide. Just silly girl things, I suppose. If we take into account Doffy's actions and beliefs, we can see where the similarities lie to even start a business together. At first, I thought Kaido didn't realize Doflamingo wanted this destruction of the world. But his introduction makes it very clear Kaido wants this destruction too. So obviously Kaido isn't just a brute, but he has intelligence in his dealings as well. The only thing is, we know why Doffy wanted destruction, as it came from the total anger of his rejection from the heavens. But at this chapter's point in time, we had no idea why Kaido wanted the world's end. Even more than that, Kaido didn't just want destruction, he wanted war. The greatest war the world has ever seen. And that's an important distinction to make, because everything that surrounds Kaido, everything about Kaido, is about war. And again, for a world that seems to be having wars all over the globe, at all times, it seems weird Kaido hates his life when he, in my opinion, perfectly fits into it. But as Oda does with characters such as Kaido, he's given us the ending before the beginning. And Wano is where we finally get answers for Kaido's unusual state of being. I think Wano is a fantastic arc and was an amazing climax to the second act of One Piece. But I'm biting my tongue, because I'm not here to gush about Wano. I'm here to gush about a big, fat, drunk dragon instead. Similar to how Kaido had Doflamingo terrified of his power, he had the land of Wano terrified as well. And similar to Punk Hazard being an island full of machines and factories, a virtually unlivable wasteland, Wano was on its way to becoming that. We find Wano's water is undrinkable, the food is inedible, and Kaido's factories are causing toxic levels of pollution at an alarming rate. Of course, Punk Hazard became the way it was due to Aokiji's and Akainu's fight, but it still serves as a dark parallel to Wano. Kaido finds no value in life, no empathy in the lives he's ruining, and exists as the force behind Orochi, the current shogun of Wano. To us, this is an unimaginable cruelty, and one has to wonder how Kaido can sleep at night with what he's doing to the land. Because Kaido isn't Doffy. Doflamingo had no heart. That was the whole basis of his character. While I wouldn't call Doffy insane per se, his cruelty came from a place of divine retribution against the celestial dragons. Doflamingo couldn't care less about the common person. To him, they were all insects that could be slaughtered due to the common filth in their blood. What I'm saying is, Doflamingo's ways of thinking clearly stemmed from his time as a celestial dragon. Even as a child, he was asking his dad where his slaves were, which is a very cute thing for a kid to do. Don't you think? Since the time skip, Oda doesn't really write comical villains anymore. He gives everyone motivation now, and Kaido is no exception. In any other series, Kaido's existence would have me saying, well, he's the big bad. We should just expect him to be an insane villain who couldn't give a shit about the people around him. And again, this isn't a problem in concept. We are allowed to have comical villains. But with the evolution of Oda's writing, and with how One Piece behaves as a series, the comical villain Kaido may first seem to be is not true at all, because for a man who seems happy enough to super dragon blast anyone in his way, it's totally strange his hobby is committing Kaidocide. I know this explanation might be a bit long-winded, but I'm trying to show there's a method to Oda's madness, in the same way there's a method to Kaido's too. Kaido is not a shallow character. He was never just the big bad of the week. He was the big bad of this century for One Piece. So when we see the Land of Wano, when we see the devastation, when we discover Kaido's iron claw of tyranny, our first question must be, but why? Why overtake Wano? Why deal with Doflamingo? Why seek out a great war? And why is he still trying to end himself through it all? These are big questions to ask, and each interaction with Kaido revealed the answers bit by bit. Oda went backwards in Kaido's story. Like I said, he has a habit of showing us the ending before the beginning. And it's no secret to anyone that Kaido had a continuous fascination with strength. Not just with strength, but with war and with battles. His existence seemed to center around it, and the reason that's so interesting is because his ways of life, his beliefs of strength, seem to mirror the way of the samurai. Wano indisputably is the land of strength. Samurai are believed to be terrifying warriors within the world of One Piece, and strength is so desired within Wano that it's ingrained in their culture. The women of Wano are believed to be weak, so their status is lower than that of the men, and they are barred from becoming samurai. Oden himself was so strong and mighty that everyone fell at his feet, and the panel of someone yelling to hide their wives and daughters due to Oden's presence always makes me laugh. This man is just an absolute machine. Strength in Wano is a very attractive thing to have, and it's a theme that ties Kaido to the land. Kaido even admits he admired the way of the samurai due to their strong will and their emphasis on strength. And it's no stretch to say Kaido himself was attracted to the strength of Wano. While he originally went there to avoid government intervention, strength was definitely still a part of it. This is why Oden was so mighty, as how could he not be if he hails from a land of strength? But we see a difference in Kaido's strength in comparison to Oden's strength. The people of Wano are terrified of Kaido. They find no envy in his strength, not in the way they did Oden's. And there's a message here of how one chooses to use their power. While the samurai's strength was seen as attractive and enviable thanks to their protection of Wano, Kaido's was seen as horrifying due to his oppression of Wano. And yet, unlike the people of Wano, Kaido doesn't differentiate his attraction of strength. Kaido doesn't care what strength is used for. He doesn't care which side has strength, because he admires it nonetheless. And this is where he differs in the way of the samurai. Kaido does not find terror in absolute power of strength, but instead he finds joy and admiration in it. His relationship with Oden especially is a good showcase of this. Kaido is cruel, but he isn't unreasonable. Unlike Doffy, who I would call both cruel and unreasonable. After all, Doflamingo found shooting someone dead was the only way to offer an acceptable apology to him. Kaido thinks nothing of the sort. Yes, Doffy is a man of business, but he is also a man of pure rage. Kaido is not a man full of rage. If anything, I'd say he's full of sorrow. But I will get back to the Doffy comparisons, because for now, we have to look at Oden. Kaido, in a semi-ironic twist, seems to mourn Oden just as much as the samurai do. Oden felt nothing but disgust for Kaido, while Kaido found a rival and, I want to say, a purpose in Oden. Oden's strength was so mighty that even Kaido acknowledged it, and when he fights Kaido's samurai 20 years later, long after Oden's death, Kaido is nothing short of frustrated. He yells at the samurai, "I could have let you kill me, but you people are not Oden. We will never see a monster samurai of his like again. It is too shallow. You don't have enough power to open up the old scar. The scar in question is the scar Oden gave him 20 years ago during their great battle. Now, of course, Kaido doesn't mean this literally, because we can see the scar bleeding, but he means this completely figuratively. And we get important information here. This information being, it is possible to kill Kaido. There are people out there who can damage Kaido, who can kill Kaido. Kaido can hand himself over to death if he wants. And considering he is Kaido-sidal, why doesn't he just let his life be taken by these samurai? Kaido's fantasy of death is only hammered in while facing the samurai. As he says, Roger and Whitebeard, they did it right. It may not be the way of the times anymore, but death is what completes a person. So again, why does Kaido not give his life to these samurai? The samurai who he admits in this same monologue love so much. Well, because they're not good enough. They're cheap replicas of Oden, and that's all Kaido can see them as. Kaido very literally dreams of death. He tries to take his own life all the time, but it must be taken on even ground. Damaging him isn't enough. Cutting him is an impressive fate, but not something worth his life. So he grieves losing a powerful foe like Oden, who he saw as worthy of taking his life. Oden made Kaido tremble in awe and excitement due to his monstrous strength. He's the man who first damaged Kaido and gave him this magnificent scar. And he genuinely speaks of and speaks to Oden with a lot of respect. As Oden boils in the pot during his execution, Kaido looks Oden dead in the eye and apologizes for killing Hyogoro's wife. A pain he didn't mean to cause Oden and one he clearly regrets. Kaido also says Wano will speak of Oden for years to come, saying he died a spectacular death. And for a man like Kaido, who quite literally romanticizes death, this is a very compassionate thing to say. Yes, he still shot Oden in the head, but we must remember how Kaido works. Death completes a person, and Kaido is not only seeing, but causing Oden's completion with his own hands. Contrary to popular belief, Kaido doesn't actually enjoy killing people, at least not fellow warriors and pirates like himself. And to Kaido, this probably seemed like a mercy killing. He envies Oden in every way, from his life to his strength to his death. In the same way, he envies Roger and Whitebeard. But in that same sense, he probably believed Oden to be too soft, just like he believed Roger and Whitebeard to be too soft as well. Oden had a weakness, and that weakness was caring. He cared about Wano, he cared about his samurai, and he cared about his family. Oden lost against Kaido due to foul play. The foul play being Orochi's minions pretending to take Momonosuke's head. And Kaido both regrets and hates that. Kaido cannot stand that this has happened, that their battle was cut unfairly short due to such interference. But he still doesn't give Oden a second chance. Probably because, in his eyes, Momonosuke shouldn't have made him stumble. After all, if we compare Oden and Momo to Kaido and Yamato, we see stark differences. I believe one of the reasons Kaido even has a son is to show that not even a child of his own blood will make him stumble, and shows Kaido prioritizes strength in every single aspect of his life. If Yamato isn't strong enough to withstand tests of strength, he doesn't care about him. He thinks Yamato should be grateful for how he raised him, for how he quite literally beat him, because he was making his child stronger. And in Kaido's abusive parenting style, he cares about Yamato by not caring about him, because if the roles were reversed in the Oden fight, and someone held Yamato's head as a threat, would Kaido stumble? No, he'd continue on with the fight because Yamato should be strong enough to protect himself. Otherwise, Kaido holds no respect for him. To recap, Kaido wants to die, but he's a monster. Kaido doesn't just want a death, but a magnificent one, and trying to take his own life in a weird way means he really respects himself, but he's such a unit he can't even succeed in committing Kaido-side. So he drinks. He's a stinking drunk because he's upset. He's tired of the weak world he's been forced into, and he's got no one to give his life meaning. Because strength isn't just one of Kaido's values. Battle and war aren't just a way of life for Kaido, but a necessity. And Kaido's emphasis on strength is shown again and again and again. Kaido wants the greatest world this war has ever seen. He wants the strongest pirate crew, and he continuously recruits people to make this a possibility. Kaido only kills when his offer to join him is rejected, and even then, sometimes he doesn't kill at all. Going back to Doflamingo, Kaido and Doffy both have a crew they use for their own gain, but it's in vastly different ways. I stand by that Doffy had no respect or heart for his crew, since he saw everyone who wasn't a celestial dragon as bugs to step on and use. Law even said Doffy doesn't make families, he just uses the pretense of a family to use people, and I believe him. Law's the total victim in the Doflamingo situation. Why would I not believe him when he says Doffy has no heart? But Kaido isn't like that. Kaido holds a heavy respect for his crew. You just need to earn it. And the thing with Kaido is, when you earn it, he never forgets it, because he never forgets your strength. When Jack takes on the Minx, failing to do so and collapsing to the ground, he apologizes to Kaido. But Kaido says to Jack, "It's not that you are weak, it's that they were too strong." And continues on to say he refuses to stand still as one of his crewmates gets beaten in front of him. Jack is a member of his All-Stars crew that's only made up of 3 crewmates. And to make it to this rank, you need unbelievable strength. So it's no stretch to say, once you reach the All-Star level, you have Kaido's respect forever. This is why members of the lower level, the Tobiroppo, are desperate to challenge the All-Stars. The second you beat an All-Star, you become an All-Star, and you have Kaido's unending respect. Also, it's very hard to keep saying All-Star without having the goddamn Shrek song in my head. Again, Kaido is a monster, but he's not unreasonable. His worldviews are just totally skewed. How he sees a person and sees their worth is cruel to us, but totally justified to him. I'm not trying to defend Kaido's actions when saying that. I'm just trying to explain why he doesn't see what he's doing as something brutal. If anything, Kaido semi-respects anyone who tries to stand up to him, and that's why he offers his hand to join his crew before killing anyone, giving them a choice he sees as merciful. But if he sees true potential in a person, he tries to break them and make them serve him, as he did with all the samurai, Eustace Kid, and Luffy. Point blank, he just respects strength. But why is this the case? What happened to Kaido to make him so reliant on strength, to the point it's the only thing he sees? For that, we need to get into his backstory, which is both shockingly short and shockingly insightful for why he does what he does and why he is who he is. Kaido came from a nation where waging war was the only means of survival, but Kaido was also just an extremely powerful child. No one could beat Kaido, even in his very early youth, and his early development of monstrous strength is what pushed him down a skewed path. Kaido didn't seem to have any mental mentors at a young age. He didn't have anyone to look after him. Surviving and existing just meant being the strongest, because no one would touch him if he was the strongest. And in his early life, this is what he decided made men equal. You find your true purpose, your true existence on the battlefield. It doesn't matter if you're fighting a poor man or a noble man. You are all equal in war, and Kaido found a sense of liberation in this. This is why Kaido didn't understand the celestial dragons. He didn't know why anyone obeyed them, because riches and political power meant nothing to him. Why should he obey someone who can't beat him on the battlefield? Kaido's way of life was extremely primitive, but it only made sense with how he grew up. Kaido's life is especially made tragic when his kingdom decides they can't handle him, and the Marines wanted Kaido's strength for themselves. Being unable to handle Kaido was, of course, a lie, because the current king of the country was offered a seat at the reverie if he handed over Kaido. In rage, Kaido shouts, "I'm not a political bargaining chip," and I can't help but feel for Kaido in this moment, because Kaido's life, his being, is not his own here. His person and power is only being used as a trading tool, forcing him into a system he doesn't understand. And it's yet another instance of the Marines and the world government not treating people as people. Kaido was forced into piracy by rejecting the Marines. Time and time again, we are shown examples of how this Marine system is only creating more outlaws. And because Kaido faced injustice, he reached a violent conclusion. This conclusion being, fairness and freedom is not determined by blood relation. It does not mean relying on positions of power. It means brawling it out. Kaido saw weakness around him. He saw weakness in the Celestial Dragons. He saw weakness in the Marines, and he decided they were lower than him. Hence why when Kaido takes over a country like Wano, he blames the weak people for being weak. That's the kind of country he was raised in, and that's the rule he now lives by. True equality means an eye for an eye, a fist for a fist, and the clashing of men within a war. Kaido's existence was a weapon, and this child, who grew up on a war-torn island, needed to make sense of that. While Oda's commentary is very blatant in my opinion, this is honestly the most on-the-nose one in terms of being anti-war. Because we are seeing the effects of war, especially the effects of children who don't even know who or what they're fighting for, forcibly thrown into battle before even being fully developed. Kaido has turned into a cruel, depressed drunk who can't find any meaning outside of war, to the point he even sees freedom in it. If the Marines and the world government wanted to trap Kaido within their system and turn him into a government dog, then his only way to liberation was through war. Strength is freedom to Kaido, and a great war will not only knock down the weak kings from their thrones, but free the world of a nonsensical system that Kaido can't make sense of. A great war will not only give Kaido a purpose, but will grant him liberation. And I'm sure we can now see why he has connections to Joy Boy here. I honestly would call Kaido a failed Joy Boy, since he does have the will for liberation. He just has an insanely skewed version of it. Kaido's liberation only works for him. It works for no one else. And it's probably why he thinks Joy Boy is going to be the person who defeats him. Because in Kaido's mind, that will make Joy Boy the freest person of all. The ironic part is, technically he was right, but Luffy's strength comes from his soft heart, something Kaido didn't understand with Roger, Whitebeard, or Oden. Luffy cares about people beyond strength. The fact Luffy doesn't rank his crew at all in terms of a hierarchical strength is proof enough, and it parallels Kaido's ranks of strength completely. Through his past, Kaido freed people he thought were powerful, but were being being held hostage by weaker people. King is an example of this, and he tells King he's going to change the world with him. So I'm sure we can all understand, or at least see, why Kaido wanted a war of a massive scale. He gets angry when he sees the physically weak holding back the physically strong, and a war is the only thing that will free these people in his mind. Kaido had even faced defeat before, but that just gave him more purpose until he became so strong no one could contend him anymore. So now, with no one to fight, he has no purpose. It's why he enjoyed his fight with Luffy so much, and why he was so shattered when a CP0 agent nearly unfairly ended the fight. Kaido is finding purpose in Luffy, he's possibly finding Joy Boy in Luffy, and Kaido, in a f***ed up way, is having fun again. Kaido is a terrible person, but his actions and thoughts make sense with what this war-torn world turned him into. And in an absolutely bizarre twist, Luffy had honestly given Kaido his dreams back. Luffy gave back Kaido his joy, he gave him back his ambition, and he gave him back his worth for existing. Luffy's life has made the world less dreary for everyone, and that's so funny because he's even made it less dreary for Kaido. Kaido is happy to be defeated, he's happy to be punched into the ground because those are his rules of equality. And I don't know if he's actually dead, but if he is, this is a happy ending for Kaido, because as Kaido said, death completes a person, and if Luffy took him out, this means Kaido has finally met Joy Boy and has been killed by the most powerful person in the world, which is all he wanted. When we first meet Kaido, there's an incredible monologue that covers his introduction. Part of this monologue included the words, "The strong live and the weak die. That is the only rule of this world." These words encapsulate Kaido perfectly, and by the end of Wano, Kaido himself fell victim to this belief. I truly believe there is a true tragedy in Kaido, since this is a man who had a childhood filled with nothing but violence. Kaido knew nothing else, he was taught nothing else, and he was formed into a monster because of it. No system reached out to help him, they only used him and enabled him. So Kaido's sense of self was forever broken. As one of Orochi's minions said to him, humans have always resorted to brutality to solve problems. And Kaido agreed with it completely. Kaido believed there was no easy answers in this world. There was no reason in this world. And all answers, all reason, could be determined through war. I think that's a terribly tragic existence. And while I would never be on Kaido's side for anything he did, you have to wonder if this monster could have been prevented if the people around him, the system, the world, simply reached out their hand to help a confused, suffering child. A monster is not just born, they are created. Kaido is no exception. And with that, thanks for watching. This ended up being bigger than I planned. Turns out there really is a lot to talk about with Kaido. As always, what do you think about Kaido? Do you like him? Do you hate him? Is he boring? Is he fun? Personally, I really like Kaido, but I do have a dragon bias, so whatever. Just a quick reminder that I do have a Patreon, and if you would like to support me there, I'd really appreciate it. However, I know not everyone can support me in that way, and just watching and sharing these videos does so much more than you can imagine for me. Tips are also nice though, I will not lie. My Patreon also mentions how to get into my Discord, which I always forget to mention, but I do have a Discord. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover, One Piece or otherwise, please let me know, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. See ya!